Welcome along to Krunching Gears, Season 1, Episode 9. In this episode, Dr. Frank O'Donoghue and myself, Kevin Glendinning, talk rally. Dr. Frank takes us through his early years and doing navigational events, going into stage rallying, and it tells us about some of the legendary drivers he sat with in the intervening years: Frank Fennell, Billy Coleman, Bertie Fisher, just to name but three. He then goes on to explain later in his career, helping Motorsport Ireland out, setting up different events and different bits and pieces. That's a very, very interesting listen. I'm sure you will agree.
What could you do in a works car with works backup, you think, Frank? Take it handy and win every rally around.
Bertie Fisher and Andrew Nesbitt have made the 1999 event a classic, as we have already said. Never has so much been provided for so many by so few.
The proudest time in the seat of a rally car, because that day and that hour and those minutes, I got the bit between my teeth. You know, I really stood up and was counted and said, this is not getting away. I remember when we pulled on our helmets and Donald says to me, what are we doing? I said, we're going for gold, Barrett.
Welcome along to Krunching Gears. In this episode of Krunching Gears, we speak to Frank O'Donoghue. This man has been a legend of Irish motorsport for more years than I'm sure he cares to remember. He sat with some of Ireland's top talent, and I'm sure he'll explain to us as the episode progresses. And he's also been involved behind the scenes. Frank, you're very welcome to the episode tonight.
Thank you. Yeah, thank you.
How did you first get involved in motorsport?
Well, I grew up in Dunboyne, County Meath, and before Mondello came on stream, it was the main. Dunboyne and the Phoenix Park were the two major motor racing events in the Irish calendar, and our house was actually on the inside of the circuit, so we had to stay in our gardens and house until the racing was over. Also, growing up in Dunboyne was David Yeats, and the two of us literally we met each other when we were babies, and we're still the best of mates. So David was equally bitten by the bug, and he had a Mini Traveller. He decided we were going to go rallying, so we started off at a very high level at the Double Diamond Rally, which was run out of Dundalk, a mixture of stages and navigation. And I was so clueless, I had to get Noel Davin to show me how to plot. I didn't know how to plot a point on the map. And it ended badly anyway. We hauled the sump, because we don't sump guard in those days. All you needed, I don't even know if you needed seat belts in the car, but anyway, there was nothing in the car. But we got a bit better, and after a while he got a Cooper S. And that's how I met my wife, actually, because our first event in the Cooper S, up near Kingscourt, night navigation event, came over a crest, the road went right, and we went straight on and took the left suspension out of the Cooper S. And we were sitting at the side of the road, and this car came along with these two lovely ladies in it, and they stopped to help, and one of them was Audrey, and we got married eventually. In fact, her brother went on to win that event that night. I knew her brother before I knew Audrey, so it was a night of mixed fortunes. But anyway, there you go. And so then we went on, and he around the same time I began to actually, we were coming home from the mountains for a drive one Sunday, and at Baldonnel Aerodrome there was some motorsport thing going on, so we went in to have a look, and I met with Frank Fennell, and myself and Frank then teamed up together. And Frank, still is a phenomenal driver, and we won. I think we won. It sounds very boastful. I think we won 8 club events in a row, and then we finished. He was 6th or 7th in the Circuit of Ireland. Then we won another 6 or 7 events. So we had a great run. It wasn't down to me. Frank was a brilliant test trial driver,
Right.
and if I made the balls of the night navigate of the map reading bit, he usually pulled me out of trouble by being fastest on the driving test. Oh, we did okay, but his best drive.
Effort, isn't it? You know. So.
Say again. Sorry.
It was always a team effort. Like, you know, it takes the two sides of the car to get a result.
Yeah, but he was brilliant. He was very good. But
yeah.
He drove exceptionally well in the Circuit of Ireland in '68. I remember now. I know. I'm taking into account that he lives near Sally Gap. He lived in Churchtown, only down the road from Sally Gap.
Yes.
But and it was a huge entry. There were 120 cars, and of the 120 cars, he finished 4th fastest on Sally Gap, behind Roger Clark, Paddy Hopkirk, and I think either Chris Slater or Billy Coleman. I can't remember which.
Right, yes.
And the cars were let go at minute intervals. It was 25 miles long, but of the 25 miles, he caught 5 cars. He was just brilliant. Brilliant driver.
Yeah.
Anyway, we went on from there, and then I suppose around about the late 60s, I began to navigate for Paddy Fay. He lived quite close to us in Blanchardstown.
Okay.
And if anybody knows Paddy, Paddy is one extremely nice guy, but terribly funny fella as well.
Right. Okay.
And we did a lot of rallies together, and in fact, we were the first crew from Britain or Ireland to do the Madeira rally.
Okay. Yeah.
Which was some epic, because we drove the car down to Lisbon, and my lads now they wouldn't go to Cavan without the car being up on a trailer. You know, we went to Lisbon in that.
Yes.
And when we got to Lisbon, the travel agent said, "You take the car down to such and such a dock, and you put it on such and such a freighter, and here's two tickets for you to fly to Madeira."
Okay.
Now, this was all being paid for by Smiths, the Renault people, because Paddy had won the autocross championship the previous year.
Okay. Perfect.
Anyway. Paddy said, no, we're going with the car. And the guy said, no, you can't go with the car. It's a freighter, nowhere to sleep. And Paddy said, it's okay, we'll sleep in the car. And then I realized he had a severe flying phobia.
Oh, crikey, right.
And when the guy says, you can't go in the car, full stop, Paddy said, that's it, we're going home. And I said, I didn't come down to the arse end of Europe to turn around and go home again. So anyway, I got him full. I was only a medical student at the time, so I got him full of whiskey. That's the only thing I could do. And got him onto the plane, and the first thing Paddy said to the air hostess was that he wanted to sit in the toilet. Now she thought that he wanted to use the toilet, but he said no. He says, I know. He said the toilet, the back of the plane is the safest place to be if there's an air crash. But they wouldn't let him anyway. So when we landed in Madeira, in those days, the runway was very short. And if you went too far one way, you crashed into a mountain. And if you went too far the other way, you fell into the sea. And every single plane that landed, 2 fire brigades tore along the runway on either side of the plane. And Paddy says, geez, he says, do they always land like this? And I didn't ask, yeah. And so I said, well, that's that. I'm not coming back on any effing plane, he said. And he got a banana boat back. I had to fly back. I had to wait an extra day in Madeira and then fly to Lisbon and wait another day for the cursed banana boat to catch up. But it was great fun rallying, you know.
Yes.
On one event, he was worried about a fella called Dan McAllister. I think he's dead since. He was a very good racing driver. And he appeared out in this rally. And nothing would do Paddy, but he was worrying about Dan McAllister. And I said, look, it takes racing drivers, it takes them a good few events before they can be anyway decent rally driver. And no, he's fierce quick, that fella, you want to watch him. Anyway, I was calling it off the bend, and I said 60-degree left, and Paddy reckoned this was a 45 left, and he gave it plenty. And next thing, we were upside down. And the first thing he said to me was, you know what you look like? I don't know what. You look like a turkey hanging up in a Christmas shop, because I was upside down in the bed. But anyway, well, we got fun with Paddy, and then got a bit more serious because Billy asked me to navigate for him.
Yeah, Billy Coleman came along now. That was early 70s at that stage, wasn't it?
It's 1970 or 71, thereabouts. And I remember the first event, it actually was up in Monaghan, and it was winter rally, and it was a mixture of night navigation and stages. I think I was drafted in because I was getting to be a handy enough navigator at that stage.
Okay.
And because of the navigation, and well, the stages were looked after by Billy, but it was in TIU 250.
Right.
And we tore off down the first stage anyway. It was grand. And then I could see this bend coming up, and I was trying to see it on the map because we were only just into the stage. And it looked like a gentle right, but actually turned into quite a 90-degree right. And I thought, geez, that's it, we're gone. And I was looking at the door because the door was all cut away. There was only the door skin between me and the trees.
Make it as light as possible, I suppose, wasn't it? So.
Oh, light as possible, yeah. So anyway, sure, geez, he sorted out down the gear, whatever these fellas do, and pulled handbrakes, and we were gone. And I asked him about it at the end of the stage. He didn't even remember. It was a normal day, like, you know. He was just hugely talented. And I rallied with him for the next 9 years, 8 or 9, up to 1979 anyway. And
like, he was a phenomenal talent. He's probably one of the most talented drivers to ever come out of Ireland, really, wasn't he, Billy?
Well, he would have been one of them. I never like to say, because I sat with some very good guys, and I don't want to say he was the best or he was the best, because I'm friends with them all still.
Yeah.
But he was his ability to focus. Kind of, he excluded nothing mattered but what we were at, you know. People talk now about the fashionable thing nowadays is he was in the zone, but this fella had his own zone, like, you know, this was a stage above most of them.
Yes.
Totally focused.
But then, you know, at the same time, he could switch off from the rally and to go farming and things, like, you know, where a lot of drivers just completely.
He told me. Well, there's no doubt farming was his first love. I don't know if this is widely known, but you remember the circuit he did really well. He was right up there with Clark, and he went off the road on the Glen stage because the exhaust broke, and he couldn't tolerate noise in the car.
Okay.
And it was distracting him for once, and he went off the road backwards and couldn't get out. But he had been seated number 127 or something like that, and here he was in the top 3 for most of the event.
Right.
And at the end of that rally, Bill Barnett, the one of the bosses in the Ford rally team, they offered him maybe not a full works drive, but certainly a works supported drive.
Yes.
And he turned it down because he wanted to go and see how they did farming in North America. Took a year out, went off to North America. So, but he was something else. But very demanding guy.
Right.
Oh yeah, I remember. And sometimes, you know, he'd ask you the impossible. On one occasion, he told me in the Stratus, it had a very raked windscreen. So if it was wet at all, it tended to steam up.
Okay.
And it started to steam up at the start of the stage. And we were just about to go. And he said, keep the window down, he said, but keep the rain out. So how I was supposed to do. On another occasion, we were at the start of a stage in the Stratus. And for a navigator, you know, you have to check your watch, the marshal's watch, the trip meter, pace notes or map, whichever you have at the time, and make sure that the marshal's time that was on the card, everything. And he noticed a misfire in the Stratus, and he said to me, get onto the service crew and tell them about that. Now, I was just about to get to the 10, 9, 8.
Yes.
And that would have meant opening the door because the radio was in under my legs.
Oh, crikey, yes.
At that time, it was the only time I told him I disobeyed an order. I told him to F off, and just couldn't be done. So, what were they going to do anyway in the 10 seconds left? They weren't going to fix the misfire, you know, so I'm going to have to live with this.
Yes.
But he was great.
I like the range of cars he drove and all too. Like you mentioned, the range of cars he drove as well. Like it was something else. You know.
Yeah, that's right. Great range of cars. I mean, there was the TIU 250, the old famous Escort. Now that thing looked awful, but in Billy's own words, he used to say to me, "It's not how it looks that counts; it's how it goes."
Yes.
You know, so and actually he made it.
He can make it good.
There was that. There was
the
Alpine. There was the Stratus.
Yeah.
There was the Withers of Winsford. Datsun 240Z.
Yes.
Which is probably the most comfortable car I ever navigated in because it never bounced off anything. It glided over everything. And then there was a succession of Works escorts or X-Works, STW 200R was one, and then there was another one, LVX 942 or something, I can't remember. And a few other cars like that, you know, they were. Yeah, and then I never actually navigated in them, but I sat with them when it first turned the wheel. Do you remember the Gartrack GT Escort?
Yes, the one
The
with
rear-wheel drive Escort. Sidney Meek built it. Yeah. Well, that was launched up in Enniskerry. Not in Enniskerry, up in what do you P.R. Riley, Kilbarrack out in their Holt. And we went up and down the road. In fact, I don't know. The first person to actually give it a run in competition was Bertie Fisher, and I think myself.
Right. Yes.
Because I remember I had. I don't go into this too much detail, but I had the father and mother of accidents in the Wexford rally.
Okay.
And Bertie and myself had won Wexford the previous year.
Okay.
And a fella called Seamus Burke. I don't know if you knew Seamus Burke, but anyway, Seamus, I think he didn't come with a red light in his brain. Like, he just went quicker and quicker and quicker. And we were down near Clonroach, and we were lined fourth overall in a Group 1 car, and we'd no right to be up there. But anyway, there was a long downhill straight, and the stage had been run twice before. But the first 2 times were dry, and the third time, the first 2 times were wet. The third time was dry. That was it. And I said to him, because I could see that I had the map. It was very fast right, very fast left, not flat, very fast.
Yes.
And when he turned into the right-hand bit, there was a manhole cover. You know, these are about 2 feet square manhole with a concrete lip. And I think the back right wheel just touched the concrete, and the back of the car skipped left, and he couldn't get around the left-hander then because we were set up wrong. And he hit the bank, and the car went, and we were top gear. This was downhill after a long, long straight. And the car went nose over tail down the road, and something hit my belt. I'm not sure which, the map board or my hand, and the belt's open, and I was thrown out of the car. And it rolled over and landed on top of me, except for my head and chest. But the rest of me was in under the car. And I remember looking up at the side of the car, and I saw the name of Seamus's company on the side of the car. It was Burke Brothers Demolition. But it wasn't a straight panel on the car. It was totally just, but the cage held up. The cage, everything was plastered around the cage. The roof was down at the doors, front, everything. But I couldn't. Anyway, I stopped after a while, and then because my wife, she was just kind of carry on. We had 3 young kids, and then Bertie, after about 6 months, Bertie Fisher asked me to navigate him. I remember I was up at the circuit of Monaghan, just spectating, not the circuit of the Midlands, just spectating, or Midland Rally, whatever it's called. And Bertie came up to me and says, "I want to have a word with you." And I said, "Yeah, is it serious?" He said, "It could be," he said. And I was thinking, geez, I used to write a column in one of the motor magazines. And I said, what did I say about it? Anyway, he said, "Would you do an event with me?" And I discussed it with Audrey, and he was a safe driver, Bertie, you know, he was a great driver. So anyway, we went off, and we did the Longleat stages in Longleat House, which is not too far from Bristol. And that was in the Gartrack. That was the first time it ran. I think we finished 3rd overall. But just to give you an idea what Bertie was like, I'm so fond of that guy. He was such a gentleman, you know, he really was. But before the start of the rally, we were in a small town called Frome. I think one of the Grand Prix drivers there.
Oh yeah, well, Jensen Button, I think, lives there, doesn't he? There's some of them guys there.
Yeah, well, the guy, he's retired now. He was world champion there a few years ago. I can't think of his name. But anyway, Bertie decided he wanted a bar of chocolate or something, so we stopped outside a sweet shop, and he went in. And I was there, like all navigators, with the head down, pencil in my hand, working out. And next thing, there was a bang, and the car shook. Oh, Jesus! And I looked up, and a camper van had clipped the wheel arches at the right wheel arch. And I said, if this is anything like Ireland, he'll keep going. So I jotted down the number because I had the pen in my hand and paper and everything. But it was actually the woman stopped and came back. And she was very upset. And she said, "Oh God, look at the wig." And I said, "Well, you better talk to the drivers. This is not my area." So at that stage, Bertie came out of the shop and munching away on a bar of chocolate. And she said, "I am so sorry, your beautiful car." And he said, "Sure, it's only a bit of tin, woman. Be on your way. You don't worry about it." And off she went then, you know. That was the kind of him. You know, in Ireland, the fellas would be rubbing their necks and talking about whiplash for the next 5 years until they got into the High Court, you know.
The claim would sit on.
But no, he was like that. He was. And on another occasion, we were doing the Cork 20, and we were doing okay. Jimmy McRae was leading, and we were second. And he just hung the tail out. He was a very sideways man, you know. He hung the tail out too far, and the back axle caught. You know, down the country they have these big natural stone piers for gates. They're usually round, big round piers.
Yes.
And it hooked into that. I should just peeled the back axle back, and we were out on the spot. But anyway, Sydney Meek was servicing, so we went and we got you got to change the back axle, and we went out on the Sunday run. But before that, we were staying in the Silver Springs Hotel in Cork. I remember my little fella, not little now, he's 48 or now, whatever he is. He was only about 10 at the time. And if you know the Silver Springs, there's a series of hairpin bends up to it's up on a hill, and you go up a private driveway up to it. And you put the little fella into it. You could barely see over the dashboard, like, you know. And he gave it full beans going up the hill, big power slides up the hill.
Yes.
Lock job. Well, your man was in his element. He thought it was the best thing since the sliced pan.
Yes.
That's what got him hooked on rallying.
That's it. And he probably still remembers that to this day, doesn't he? You know?
Say again?
He probably still remembers that to this day.
Oh, he does. Oh, yeah, he does. Yeah, but the three lads went into motorsport then, you know. And particularly endurance rally, and but they all did karting, and then 3 of them did Unos, and then 2 of them now have gone on into endurance rally. And the middle fella is an auctioneer. Really, the kind of business he has, weekends are busy enough time for him.
Oh yeah.
But
just going back there a few years now to your time with Billy as well. I believe there's a bit of an interesting story behind the Galway rally that you won in 1979.
Yeah, I'll tell you that story. It'll take a couple of minutes, but you'll have to bear with me.
No problem.
I went to do the rally, and it was in I think it was STW 200R, which is a works escort.
Yes.
Anyway, arrived up at the start. I sat into the car and said, "Where's the halda?" A lot of young fellas don't know what a halda is, but it was a mechanical trip meter. It wasn't like the digital ones that they have now. And he said, "Oh, geez, aren't you a good navigator? You don't need a halda. What do you need a halda for?" Now, every navigator likes to have a halda.
Yes.
But I said, "Okay, right, I'll shag him anyway." But I said, "Okay." And what I did was I got out the map, and I got the road book, and I put the whole route onto my half-inch maps.
Okay.
It's only 2 or 3 of them.
Yes.
And so I was grand. I put the road book, I had it on my lap, and went off to do the Friday run. That went grand. And on the Saturday morning, as I was leaving the Park Fairmate, they handed me an amendment.
Right.
And again, with the hassle of checking in and checking out and getting everything right, I stuck it into the road book and forgot about it.
Okay.
Now, we did the event, and we came to a fork in the road just outside Portumna. The original route said, go straight on into the control and into the service park.
Okay.
But the new route said, go out and do an additional stage, come back to the fork, and then go in. So when we came to the fork, I forgot all about the amendment.
Yes.
And I went straight in, checked into the control, into the car park, and the car went up on jacks. And that was as far as it went, because Sammy Hamill said to me, "You're here very early." And then I remembered the amendment. Oh, good Jesus.
Yes.
So I down off the jacks, back out to the junction, out, did the stage, back in again, went through the control the second time, in and had service.
Yes.
And on the way into Galway, the clerk at the course, Eamon Cotter, he's dead now, the poor man, pulled up beside us and says, "You're excluded." And he said, "For what?" And he said, "For going through a control twice." Now, normally you would be excluded for that, but there was no penalty because I checked the regs.
Okay.
I had plenty of time all day to think about this, so there was no penalty for it. I said, "There's no penalty for that." So he wasn't too happy about that, and he tore off anyway. And in the Galway, next thing the results went up and we were excluded. This time, the penalty was for failing to observe the official itinerary. And that was the exact wording of it. I remember it to this day. And I said, well, on a second now, I observed the official itinerary. I went wrong at a junction, came back to it and did what I was supposed to do and then continued on. So I did observe it. They thought that I had gone in to the service park and had done something illegal, which I hadn't.
No.
I hadn't even changed tires, you know, because Sammy Hamill said it to me, thanks be to God. Anyway, they said, no, you're kicked out. I protested. The stewards rejected it. And that was it. We said, right, well, we're going to Dawson Street over this. Now, I have to go back a few weeks or maybe a month. At that stage, I used to be the psychiatrist to the Samaritans. I used to go down, and if they had difficult cases or people they were worried about, they'd ask me about them, and I'd go down every couple of weeks anyway. And they had said to me, will you go on the Late Late Show, their big fundraising drive, on the 17th of February? And I said, yeah, that's fine. And then I got a call from the Late Late Show to say, it's now on the 10th of February. And I said, well, I can't do that. And, oh, you have to do it. You have to do it. Oh, you have to do blah, blah, blah. And they were pestering me and annoying me. And the Samaritans wanted me to go, and the Late Late wanted me to go on the show. And I looked at the time schedule and I said, okay, the rally's due to finish at 6 o'clock in Galway. The Late Late doesn't start till, what is it, 9:30 or something like that. So I said, okay, I'll get in, I'll change, and I'll get home. And I did. Now, I wasn't going to tell Billy this, especially with a protest going on. But first of all, the rally was late getting in. Usual thing, delays and so on. So we didn't get into Galway until 7 o'clock. And I immediately hopped in my car at the time. I was appointed a consultant a couple of years before, but I had an old Simca 1100. And I just legged it out to the car, still in the racing overalls, and drove as fast as I could. And it was snowing at the time. And I remember in that year, there was a petrol shortage. Now, it wasn't an all-out strike. It was some trouble in the Middle East or whatever.
Right, yes.
And I remember pulling into a garage in Lochray and hopping out of the car in my racing overalls and saying to the young fella, fill it up quick as you can. He must have thought it was some kind of lunatic, like in racing overalls, getting out of a Simca 1100. Anyway, I got back into the car and I drove home and I changed into a suit. I went on to the Late Late. And I remember Gay Byrne saying to me, he was a bit sarcastic. He says, your absence was noted. And I said, thank you. Anyway, I'm after driving from Galway through a snowstorm to get here. Anyway, when I got home, I wanted to go back to Galway, but the missus put her foot down. She said, I'll come back. After doing a rally, driving to Galway or driving from Galway. Anyway, so I got up early the next morning and drove back. But in the meantime, Billy wanted to talk to me. He had no idea I was gone to Dublin. Right. And he said, where's Frank? I want to talk to Frank. And Tom Walsh, you know Tom Walsh, he was his team manager. He was a famous guy, Tom. Anyway, Tom knew where I was gone, but he didn't want to tell him the truth. Oh, he's gone to bed, he's a bit of a headache. And that was grand. They were talking away about this penalty. And the television was on over in the corner. And next thing, there I appear, full face, you see, on the Late Show. And Bill said, geez, is there a studio in Galway? And then, of course, Tom, well, he's actually gone. He's gone to Dublin. He's gone to Dublin with a protest going. So anyway, we stuck to our guns, and the protest was heard, and their contention was that I had gone in and we had plenty of time to do an illegal service. But again, I had done my homework, and I looked at the tribunal. I said, are the distances in the road book correct? I knew it would be correct. And they said, oh yeah, Brian Brophy actually he was a solicitor. Yeah, distances are correct. And I said, well, and this event is supposed to be run at 30 miles an hour on the open road. Oh, of course. And I said, well, if you just take this for an example, and because they had an addendum, they hadn't worked out the average properly. And it worked out at about 42 miles an hour.
Ah, yes.
And I said, well, here's now on the open road, we're supposed to average 42 miles an hour. And of course, at that, the heads came up from the tribunal. Here was the club running events, way more than the permitted average on the open road.
Yes.
And I said, well, that's just an example. I said, there's no way we could have gone in, done a service, got out at a 42 miles an hour average and got back in again and still be on time. So anyway, we won the protest. But what really annoyed me was a girl in the control, the one we had gone through twice. She said 6 other cars had done the same thing. Right. She told us but none of them were penalised.
Nobody was protested then or whatever.
So that really got me going. But yeah, that was probably a good time. Then after that, then we finished second in the circuit, the Penty Ricola.
Yeah, but you won goal in that year too. Like, so that was
the year we won it.
Yeah, was that your first international one then at that time?
Say again.
Was that your first international one?
Yeah. Oh, well, in fact, I think it was we might have won Donegal years and years back, but I can't remember. I'm getting old now. But, the first event I did with Bertie actually was the Sligo Stages, which eventually became around in the WRC. That was the very first Sligo Stages, right?
Okay.
And we did that. And I won Wexford with him as well. And I did well in the Ulster too. And I did in the Alpine. But then again, we used to have trouble with the scrutineers. And going back now to TIU 250.
Yes.
On one occasion, I don't know why, but they had no proper boot lid on the escort.
Right.
So they beat out a piece of aluminium or something into a rough shape and put it on the back of the escort, and they sprayed it and sent them off to Dublin. Of course, the paint was wet, and by the time we got to Dublin, it looked like a cake with icing on it, with all the flies and dust stuck onto the back. So that was great. We went up, and he was a nice man actually, a fellow called David Bryan. He was the scrutineer up there for the circuit, and he got in. And the first thing that happened to him was he knelt on the way up. We did a couple of sandwiches, but Billy had left a cheese sandwich or a tomato sandwich, something squelchy anyway. And the man knelt on the sandwich. You don't want to get, you want to get on the good side of scrutineers. You don't want them kneeling on a tomato sandwich. Anyway, then he tapped the bulkhead between our compartment and the boot, and it was only that board stuff, the flex. It's like cardboard. It's like really stiff cardboard. But you had it painted black to look like metal. So he took me aside and he said, first of all, he didn't speak to Billy. He said, first of all, he said, never bring this car back here again. And secondly, he told me to get the metal fixed. But Billy wouldn't be too fussed about things like that.
No, it didn't matter what it looked like.
On another occasion, at scrutiny, we were told we had no fire extinguisher. So he goes up to the hotel, and at the end of the corridor there was a fire extinguisher. So he came back with the hotel extinguisher. He was only lying there somewhere in the boot. And okay, that's grand. But as soon as we left to start, at the very first garage he pulled out the fire. It was a big fire extinguisher, not the ones in the hotel.
Yes.
Look after that for me until the end of the day. I'd pick it up on my way back in. But these fellas did. I remember it was like Bertie was terribly funny at times. In Galway one year, we were, I don't know why they wanted his road insurance, because you don't need it, you have rally insurance. But anyway, they asked him, was the car insured? Oh, car's insured, yeah. With whom? I don't know who he said. Eagle Star or something like that. Where are they? London. Whereabouts in London? He's a long pause. On the left going in. But he was a very funny guy, Bertie. I had great fun with him, though. But at another occasion, he had this LVX 489T.
Yes.
It was one of the three Monty cars, which were a bit illegal because the wheelbase wasn't homologated.
Right.
It wasn't a homologated. And they were told never to park it close to another escort, or people would see the difference between the two. But anyway, in the circuit, on the way down on a Saturday morning, after having driven through the night, it was the old type circuit. He went through the night, and coming near Banagher, he said there was a long road section with no stages, and he said, "Look, I tell you what, you drive it." He said, I'm going to go to sleep in the passenger seat there. I said, "There's two things about this." He said, "Don't stall it, because there's a 24-volt starting system now. That meant as much to me as the inside of this computer. I'm not mechanical, anyway." So he says, "There's 24. It's hard to start. And the second thing is," he said, "the back wheels stick out an awful lot. So don't snag it off anything." But anyway, we went into Banagher, and there's a T-junction in Banagher with a high carb, and I did the two things at the same time. I snagged the thing and stalled it. And all I could see was this eye coming out from under an anorak over the other seat. Went, "Okay, move over." He never said a word, though. You couldn't fall out with him. But good fun with him. Yeah, he was a good guy.
Yeah.
But then I did a few more events then after in the early 80s. I did.
You done a year with Ernest Kidney as well too.
I did. Yeah, I did. I think we finished fourth in Galway,
Yeah.
third or fourth with Ernest, and then we did okay up in Donegal in a Dawson.
Yeah.
Andy Dawson's Nissan of Datsun, I think.
That's the 160J at the time.
But then my brother-in-law Robert at that stage is a very, very good driver, and I did a few events with him in an Avenger, and also did an event with him in a Clan Crusader.
Right. Yes.
Yeah. It needed more power. It had a Hillman imp engine, wasn't the quickest thing out. But we did a few events in the Avenger. We did the Mintex in an Avenger, and we had good fun in the Mintex because it's all around Yorkshire, and we were absolutely blitzed by a fella called Harry Hockley, I think his name is.
Oh yeah.
I obviously knew the forest well. Well, fair play to him. Like it was just known Sally Gap well, same thing. But anyway, he was passing us. We pulled a minute on us in some stages, and we were getting more and more despondent about this. And then there was a long drive north up towards Croft. There's a couple of rounds of Croft. I think it was Croft Rallycross circuit.
Okay.
And there was a forest up there as well. So we did the Rallycross circuit, but there was talk of snow. And I said to Robert, we had these Japanese Dunlops. I don't know where he got them, but they were like bicycle rims, really chunky, like motocross tires on them.
Okay.
So we said, look, there's nothing to be lost. We can't be any worse than we are. And we put them on, and it lashed snow. I think we were sixth fastest behind Mikkola and Hakkinen and Quattros and all sorts. So that was our moment of fame. But then he had this Toyota, which was a quick Toyota Corolla, and we were doing the circuit, and we were having a real ding dong with Louise Aiken Walker.
Oh yeah.
And she had pulled out time. It was the year, you may or may not remember this. It was the year when they allowed pace notes in Ulster.
Yes.
But not for the rest of the event. Do you remember that?
Yes, yeah. That's right.
Anyway,
over the border, you had to go back to the maps again. Yeah.
Sorry.
Whenever you went over the border, you had to go back to the maps again.
Yeah, go back. But anyway, we were close enough to her on the way down, and we had a good run at the Healy Pass. I think it was only a second either way between us. But on Kilmacalog was the same, but then it was Ardgroom, and I don't know if you know the Ardgroom, but it's a lot of 90 left, 90 right, but there's these limestone, natural stone blocks or stones on the edge of each corner, and on one of them, he must have brushed against it because it opened the tire. Okay. It's supposed to be a tarmac stage, but it's what I call gravelly tarmac, and a lot of loose chippings on top of the tarmac. Okay. And he didn't know, he didn't fit, but it was a long straight with a jump after, and geez, he took off on the jump, but when he landed, it was slightly right, and it landed on the back left wheel where the puncture was. And the thing just went crazy, like it was top gear accident again, and we hopped over a fence and into a field, and things are a right mess altogether. So I did that with them. That wasn't too bad. Now this was after I'd had the accident with Seamus Burke.
Yes.
So then we were doing the Ulster, and up near Newry somewhere in the mountains up there, we were going downhill and there was massive rocks on either side of the road. That's size of haystacks now. And I said to myself, I don't want to do this anymore, because if we go off here, we're going to have a huge accident again. And I said it to him at the end of the stage. I said, that's it, I'm stopping it. I finished the rally all right, no problem, read the notes and that. But I said, I'm not doing any more of this.
Yes.
So did I do any more? I might have done one, or I might have done some with the young lads. Oh, well, I did a lot of in night navigation events with the young lads. We went to England then, and because over in England they had, I could see this thing, endurance rallying, and I said, because I know from being at the other end, I knew the expense of the top end. I said, there's no way, lads, I can afford. I can't help you there. But I said, okay. Myself and Carl went over, and we did a few of these events. And he had an absolutely brilliant run. We did the Lombard 3 times, and the first time we retired, we had a Citroen AX GTI.
Okay,
He broke a drive shaft, and the second year he broke a drive shaft again. They were very fragile cars. And the third year he got a Rover, and he led it for 3 of the 4 days. But on the third day, whatever it was, he just dropped a wheel coming out of a chicane. He dropped it into a drain. Not a mark on the car, but he got beached. And had to wait to be pulled out by another Irish fella. He dropped down to fifth. Well, I shouldn't be boasting about it. It was a brilliant drive. He got back up to second by the end. And if it had been another day, he would have won the thing.
Yes.
And it was a brilliant drive because it was 360 kilometres of selectors through the forest, Albi and Kielder and places like that. But Lombard had sponsored it. And as far as I could see, if he'd won it, he would have gone on the trophy with Mikola and Clark and that.
Yes.
But look, he was delighted with second then.
Yes.
Then I pestered the rally committee here to, why can you not let us start this thing here? And a lot of hemming and hawing, eventually persuaded, and Aer Lingus came on board. Well, the rallies committee said you're going to have to get a club to run it. And I asked Aer Lingus, because I used to be with Aer Lingus years and years ago, and they ran the event. It was a struggle initially because we started off in 2011 in the teeth of the recession.
Yes.
But we kept going, and it's gone from it was 1 or 2 events in the first year, and last year before COVID came in, there was 8 events on the championship, and I had very healthy entries all around, 70.
Yeah.
And,
that's a real success story of it.
Yeah, it was great. I put it down to, I asked Aer Lingus to do it, and there was a very good team there, and Noel Devlin and Raymond Scullion and John Carroll, and they had run stage events, and they took a chance on me, and they said, okay, right, well, we'll give it a go. And they had very good organizational skills, which I didn't have. I was clerk at the course for night navigation years ago, but that was it. But they were doing the stages event every year.
Yes.
And they took it on board, and it went well.
So, that's it's badly needed, isn't it? Like an affordable form of motorsport, like rallying now, but very exclusive, very expensive now, hasn't it?
Yeah, and the format is simple. Basically standard 1400cc car. You're allowed to chip it, and the reason for that is it's very difficult to police.
Yeah.
If they said, okay, we'll just allow it, let them chip them. You can change the suspension, which is a wise thing because the roads sometimes are a bit rough. And if you're allowed to put in a roll cage, but if you do, you must wear a helmet and you must have a rally seat.
Okay. Yeah.
A one-piece rally seat. But Carl, the eldest fella, he's not a roll cage, which kind of worries me a bit. And you must have the full harness, but they don't have to be the central buckle type. They can be the clubman type, where you just pull the two halves together. So that's all you need. You need a sump guard, obviously, and a halda, and away you go. Like Carl, after the first couple of years in the Rovers, the problem with the Rovers was they were bit big if there was any kind of driving test involved.
Right.
And the Starlets were a better bet. So we bought a rally-prepared Starlet for 1,250 quid. Now, halfway through the season, the engine was smoking, and we had them NCT'd, so it's not going to pass. So we got an engine for 300 quid out of a scrapyard, and he won the championship.
Right. Yeah.
You can't. Nowadays it's gone a bit more sophisticated because fellas started to get chip whatever they call ECU things for them.
Of course.
And once one fella does it, that's it.
Everybody has to do it to keep up.
But the tires are controlled. You have to use a certain make of tire, and they're 60 quid a tire. So and they last you because the cars are not that powerful. So you're not going to be burning off tires every 2 or 3 stages or whatever kind of thing. Yeah. But that's about it. I was involved then in classic rallying as well. Myself and Fennell got together again in 1980-ish, and when the first Circuit of Ireland Retro was run. Yes. So anyway, we managed to win the first 3. Brilliant. And then we were 4th, and then we were 10th, so we kind of gave up after that. And Frank had a really bad accident there a few years ago too, hadn't he? Again? He was in Spain. Frank had a really bad accident out, wasn't it? Spain, he had. Years ago. Yeah. What actually happened, he was in the Monte, and he was late, Anyway, without pointing the finger at anybody, he lost it on a bend and went over onto the wrong side of the road. But it was an oncoming car. But he foolishly went onto his wrong side of the road. And at this stage, Frank had gathered the thing together and got back onto his right side of the road. So there was a collision. And the other fella had skis on the roof of the car, and they came through the windscreen and hit Frank in the throat. So I don't know if you've heard him, but he's very whispery voice now. Right. But he broke 6 ribs, and either 2 legs and 1 arm or 2 arms and 1 leg. But he
Right.
was in hospital. He was in a coma for a while.
Right.
But he went back the next year and won it. And my wife complains about it. She says, when I went to visit him in hospital, he was sitting there in the bed and he said, "Oh, that's it. I'm not doing any more rallying." And he goes back and won it.
You can't keep a good man down, isn't that what they say?
No, you can't. He's a brilliant driver.
Yeah.
Fantastic car control. Well, yeah.
And was it 2015 you won the Ivan Webb Memorial Award? Hamilton Motorsport Ireland for outstanding contribution. That must have been a real feather in your cap.
And it was nice to well, you see, I had a leg over other people because I used to do medical officer at Mondello for years and years.
Okay.
I'm sorry I'm not doing it now because they're all getting paid for it now, but I used to do it for nothing, you know. Anyway, and then I was on the navigation. I'm still on the navigation. They keep putting me on the navigation subcommittee. I've been on it something like 16 years now, and every year I get this. I don't seem to have any choice. That I get a letter saying I'm back on the committee.
You've been volunteered again.
So I had a finger in different pies, if you like. So they gave me the old. I was very pleased. It was a big honour to get something like that, you know. But yeah.
And like, as you say, you're staying there, you know, you still have huge involvement with Motorsport Ireland and all as well too. Like it must
yeah, that's the other thing. I'm the anti-doping officer for Motorsport Ireland. So, which there's a lot of paperwork involved, but there's no performance enhancing drugs in motorsport. You know, if you take steroids, for example, you just get heavier, and that's the last thing you want is to have a heavy driver in the car.
Yes.
But what we do get are fellas taking recreational drugs.
Okay.
And they forget. Like I give lectures or talks to various clubs whenever I get the chance to get them all together. They forget like that if you take cannabis can be detected in your blood up to 6 weeks after you've taken it.
Okay, right, yes.
And a lot of them are the same because the tests now are so sophisticated. That's like the Lance Armstrong thing. They went back and looked at his samples with modern methods and they found, you know, but we've had a couple of fellas. I had one fella actually before one event and he had alcohol on board. Right. Now he was well below what was then the legal limit, but we couldn't let our limit was 0 because if he had gone into the crowd, even though alcohol wasn't involved, the papers got hold of it. Drunken rally driver, you know, blah blah blah.
Of course.
So you have to be careful. And anyway, would you want to be sitting beside a fella going up Mal's Gap or the Healy Pass when he's full of some sort of chemical? No, you know, I wouldn't either. It's a great outfit. I've made lots of friends over the years, and I'm still friendly with many of them. And I never fell out with any of the drivers. So,
no, you know, that's a fantastic sport, isn't it? You know, there's such great friendships built, and you know, it's lasted a lifetime, as you just said there. You know. So.
Yeah. Well, I remember the first year. Well, the year myself and Fennel won the Night Navigation Championship. The cars were prepared by a fella called Tony Phillips. Called Twinny for short because he was an expert at building twin cam engines, but he's a legend. And that was 1980. Well, now tomorrow I'm going over to Tony with one of the lads' endurance cars. I'd like to get some more. Yes. He'll still grumble and I'll grumble about what he's charging me, and you know, but we're still. Yes. Well, anyway, there you go. But I wouldn't change it. I met my wife through it. You know, the lads all do it. At this stage now, they're more like brothers to me than sons. You know, because we can sit down and talk about the thing.
And have they ever been tempted to venture into rallying, or are they happy enough with the endurance side?
Say again?
Have they ever been tempted to venture into rallying?
Yeah. Carl did. He upgraded his Rover, and he went and did the modified up to 1400cc class in the Aer Lingus forestry event. And even though the car is bog standard, wasn't even chipped at the stage. He finished third overall. Third in his class. Yes. Then he went to Wales and did the same over there in what they call a rally first class. It's like an upgraded example of a endurance car. You have to put in the safety upgrades, and he finished third over. I think he did some other one as well. I can't remember. I lose track of them all now, what they're at. Yeah, but Carl would be the one. He'd be the most competitive of them. You know, he'd be the middle fella has kind of just hasn't got the time to be doing it, and the youngest fella, a cousin of mine. I'll explain them to you like this. A cousin of mine asked me. He said, well, which of them is the best driver? And I said, they're different. And then he said to me, well, look, if you had to have a getaway driver after robbing a bank, who would you choose? and I said, well, I said, if we didn't know the route and it had to be driven blind, I'd pick Carl every time. I said, if it was, he's the eldest fella. I said, if it came out of the bank and there was snow all over the road, I'd pick Miles because he's phenomenal reflexes.
Yes.
And I said, if we had a chance to practice the route, I'd pick the youngest fella because he's very meticulous. He's bang on. Like when he was racing at Mondello, the old saying, you could put a penny on the track and he'd hit the penny every time, like, you know, and his lap times would be very consistent. So yeah, they're all different. And
Yeah.
I know I'd be killed if I said one was better than the other, you know.
Yeah.
I might leave home.
But that, you know, you can see the pride that brings you to have the son still involved in the sport and all too.
Say again?
You can see the pride that brings you to have your son still involved.
Oh, yeah. And they're level. I mean, I said to them years ago when they were in cars, don't think you're going to be the next Ayrton Senna, because you have to spend loads of your own money, which I don't have. Now, they're all at school at the time.
Yeah.
And secondly, you have to be with the right team in the right car at the right time.
Yeah.
And unless all those things come together, you can forget. And you have to have extraordinary talent.
Yeah.
I don't know if they had the talent or not, but we never found out that. But you know, and they enjoy themselves. They're good crack, and they're a nice bunch in the endurance thing.
Yeah, it seems to be a very friendly side in the sport.
Yeah.
Well, Frank, I think that's just a nice wee trip down memory lane there this evening. So thank you very much for taking the time to join us here tonight.
Yeah, not at all.
Thank you very much for listening to Krunching Gears. That was Dr. Frank O Donoghue and myself, Ken Glendinning, talking rally. If you enjoyed it, could you please like and share across all social media platforms? And if you're listening to Apple Podcasts, could you please rate and review the show? It'd be very much appreciated. Until the next time, take care.